Hey guys, it's me! Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Ben 10, Alien Force, which is definitely one of my favorite entries in the franchise, and kind of one that seems to get overlooked quite a bit. But anyways, let's take a look at the story of Ben 10, Alien Force. Let's get started. The series begins with Ben and his family moving from California to a small, rural town in Colorado. After Gwen got accepted into a prestigious magic academy, soon after they arrived, Ben discovers an abandoned garage that just so happened to have the Omnitrix in it, allowing him to once again transform into various aliens. This time around, however, the Omnitrix has a bit more of a limit to it, specifically in the sense that he can only use each alien for 10 minutes at a time. Of course, this wouldn't be much of a problem if the aliens themselves weren't all incredibly powerful, leading to Ben having to make tough decisions when deciding who to transform into. Shortly after finding the Omnitrix, Ben learns of the existence of the Forever Knights, an ancient order whose sole purpose was to hunt down and destroy the It's not long before they come across Ben and the Tennysons, causing the series to kick off with a bang as Ben transforms into Heat Blast to take them on. The episode establishes a few things. One, that Ben is basically a kid, which makes it even more impressive that he's able to hold his own against these guys. And two, that Ben's family is pretty much done with him using the Omnitrix, leaving Ben feeling isolated and misunderstood. Luckily for him, though, he would soon find a friend in Kevin, a strange boy with a dark past, who had previously attempted to steal the Omnitrix, but found himself helping Ben instead. In the following episodes, Ben and Kevin team up to stop a variety of villains, some of which were actually pretty interesting, like Jaskier, an alien bounty hunter with a vendetta against Ben's grandfather, Carl. Although one thing that did become quickly apparent is that despite Ben being the main character, he didn't exactly know what he was doing most of the time, often transforming into aliens without any real strategy behind it, leading to close calls on a semi-regular basis. As the season progresses, however, Ben would get a lot better about this. To name just a few examples, he starts to learn how to fly properly, stops going into fights, unprepared, and even begins learning how to control his transformations better, which allows him to turn into aliens like Diamond Head without accidentally turning into Way of the Fist first. On top of all this, Ben also began to fully embrace his role as a hero. No longer fighting to simply protect the world, but to help people as well. Something that is definitely a step up compared to the original series, where Ben mostly fought because he did unwant to be bored. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows though, as halfway through the season, Ben and his friends are confronted with a massive revelation. The Forever Knight leader revealed to actually be Ben's grandfather, Carl, who had apparently been brainwashed by an unknown party. While this does lead to an intense battle, Ben is ultimately unable to defeat his grandfather, although this would end up being a blessing in disguise as the person who attacked. Carl shows up and reveals themselves to be none other than Vilgax, who had Ben's grandpa brainwashed in order to get the Omnitrix for himself. And man, it sure does feel good to say that name. Vilgax is arguably the best villain in the entire franchise, and seeing him return was an absolute treat. After obtaining the Omnitrix, Vilgax immediately set his sights on conquering Earth, although this proved to be a lot harder than he anticipated, with Ben using every trick he could think of to try and stop him. The two eventually agree to meet in the middle for a final showdown, which takes place in an abandoned subway tunnel. During the fight, Vilgax proves to be far more powerful than Ben, although Ben refuses to give up even after getting beaten down. And I gotta say, this was one of the best moments in the series. Ultimately, though, Ben still ends up losing, and Vilgax would actually go on to conquer Earth, setting up the series' second season. This might sound like a bad thing, but I personally thought it was a great call on the part of the writers, because it made the second season that much more exciting to watch, since Vilgax had already won. Season 2 picks up with Vilgax ruling the Earth with an iron fist. However, he doesn't really do anything too crazy, mainly just putting Ben and his family in stasis at one point and threatening to destroy the world at another. Meanwhile, Ben is stuck inside the Null Void and is forced to compete in a competition hosted by the mysterious entity known as the Constellarian to win the right to return home. Because yes, the series also introduces the concept of transdimensional travel. Pretty cool, huh? Anyways, after proving himself to be the strongest competitor, Ben is returned to Earth and is finally able to defeat Vilgax with the help of his new alien, Ian setting the stage for the show's third and final season. Season 3 wastes no time in kicking things off, as the Forever Knights immediately attack Ben and his family, revealing that Vilgax had reformed the organization and was now working with them. Now, Vilgax's goal was simple. He wanted to open a portal to the Null Void and merge our dimension with it, destroying reality in the process. In order to do this, he needed a special device called the Chrono-Sapien Time Modulator, which was being guarded by a group of Forever Knights. But luckily for Ben, Kevin, and his sister, Gwen, they were able to sneak in and steal it. From there, the trio set off to find the Hybrid, a race of aliens who had previously been sealed away in the Null Void, but were now attempting to take over our dimension. This arc is easily one of the highlights of the series, as we get some incredible action scenes and memorable villains. However, at the end of it, Vilgax manages to obtain the time modulator anyway and opens a portal to the Null Void. Beginning the series' final arc, Vilgax sets his plan in motion by placing several devices around the world that allow him to siphon off the power of other aliens. And while Ben and the gang do their best to stop him, it quickly becomes apparent that this is going to be one of their toughest challenges yet. But don't worry though, because Ben comes up with a brilliant idea. He lures Vilgax into the middle of the ocean and then uses the combined powers of him and all the aliens he has befriended throughout the series to seal Vilgax away inside the Null Void once and for all. With all that aside, the series wraps up with Ben returning to normal life, although this time with his family and friends accepting of his abilities. As a final nice touch, we also get a glimpse of an older, presumably much more powerful Ben, suggesting that the series could continue beyond this point. So, overall, what did I think of Alien Force? Well, to put it simply, I thought it was amazing. There are a few episodes here and there that I didn't enjoy as much, but the majority of the show is really fun to watch. The animation looks fantastic, the characters are likable, the action is exciting, and the plot is engaging. Also, I love the art style of this series. I always thought the character designs were cool. And the way they incorporate it, CGI really added a certain something to the visuals. One thing I will criticize the show for, though, is its soundtrack or lack thereof. See, most of the time, the music's either not used at all or used incredibly sparingly, which means that a lot of the time you're just listening to sound effects. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, as sound effects are very important to a show's quality. Still, it would have been nice if the music was used a bit more often to further accentuate certain scenes. Another thing I want to talk about is the characters, specifically Ben C. A lot of people tend to complain that Ben is a bit dumb sometimes, and I can see where they're coming from. There are many times where he says or does something that makes you face. That being said, though, I don't think it's as big of an issue as people make it out to be. You have to remember that Ben is still a child. The fact that he is able to hold his own against some of the strongest aliens in the universe is impressive enough. Him being smart is just a bonus. Moving on. I wanted to talk about Kevin when I first watched the series. I didn't like Kevin. I thought he was an annoying little punk who just got in the way. However, looking back on it now, I realize that he actually has some really good character development, especially considering that he starts out as an unlikable bully and turns into a respected member of the team by the end of the series. Finally, I need to talk about Vilgax, who I mentioned earlier is arguably the best villain in the franchise. Everything about this guy is perfect! His design, his voice, his backstory, his motivations, his strength, and the fact that he constantly gets screwed over by the writers, which I honestly find to be hilarious. I just love this guy so much. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Ben 10, Alien Force. What about you guys? Which aliens are your favorite? Do you agree or disagree with anything I said? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have yourself a great day.